Today we are going to be talking about stress, what it is, and how to deal with it. So I drew up this diagram. We're going to start in the middle with stress. Stress to me is what happens to our body and our mind in certain situations, and the reactions and things caused in the body, side effects that happen afterwards. So here we've got stress. There are good coping mechanisms and bad coping mechanisms to stress. We'll start with the bad. So bad, we tend to avoid. We definitely deny, forget. We try to forget the things that are going on, and we tend to shut in. It definitely hurts more than anything. It doesn't help us, and it's harder to get under control. If we don't have good coping skills, we tend to have bad management, which can cause not being physical. It can create a relationship with food and substance abuse. So you turn to things like alcohol or drugs that tend to numb the situation, and you don't deal with it because it will still be there when those things wear off. There's also a short-term side effects and long-term side effects. Before we get into those, we will go over to the good coping mechanisms or ways to cope. So writing out your feelings, talking about your feelings is definitely a good way to cope, as well as thinking positive has been proven by many different studies. If you just try to think positive, it has been proven to help cope with stress. It definitely helps more than anything if you can cope better. Good ways to manage stress are meditation, being physical, getting your body moving, not just staying in bed, seeking medical help if needed, and practicing all of these good coping skills. When I'm stressed, I will definitely work out. Moving my body helps me de-stress. It helps me sleep better. It helps me relax more, get my mind off of things, not avoiding, but it does help me give myself that time to really think things through. I tend to be a shut-in when I deal with stress badly. I'll oversleep. I will not talk to my friends or family if I'm extra stressed or have lots of anxiety, which is also a cause of bad management of stress. So the short-term effects of stress in general are going to be overeating, getting headaches, chest pain, or stomach aches. You're very likely to become overwhelmed and be angry and get angry a lot easier and quicker. Long-term side effects of stress definitely are big health issues. Weight gain or loss can happen. Depression, insomnia, long-term stress can cause anxiety, social withdrawal, and heart disease. Stress causes our heart to beat faster and sometimes pump more blood through our veins than normal, so our blood pressure tends to rise. The main big deals with stress in our body is going to be our emotions are affected, our immune system is affected, our heart, like I just explained, gets affected. Our nervous system can shut down. Our immune system shuts down, and we tend to not be able to fight sicknesses or illnesses as well because our body is so exhausted. There are 3 stages to stress. One of them is exhaustion. That's the very last one. I wrote them here for a visual. Alarm is the very first reaction to stress when we get it. It's a release of hormones, and the brain picks up on that, and it starts to resist. That is number 2 here. Any of these good and bad coping and management skills are a part of our brain resisting. Our body starts to adapt to those feelings and cope with the stress, and it fights to get back to normal. And then the last one is, like I said, exhaustion. So after we've been resisting it for so long, our body has used up all the energy it had to fight the stress and try and get back to normal, that it's too exhausted to work anymore. So that's when our immune system starts failing, our heart goes under, and all the other things that I've listed start taking into place. Okay, so we're going to move on to how our brain kind of gets to the coping and the dealing with stress. So it starts here with our brain. Our brain has pathways that it chooses to get us to our thoughts and emotions. There is a fast path and a slow path. So when we use the fast path, we tend to have no thought, and it's our automatic response. It's likely that we fight or flight. So what fight or flight is we automatically decide, are we going to stay here and fight for this, and put up with it and deal with it right there, or are we going to disappear and avoid it and be done with it? Studies that I read with this say that men are more likely to fight or flight when dealing with emotions and stress. The pathway of slow response, we tend to stew on it, sit there and think about it and analyze it. That is something that I do. I'm an overanalyzer, but things that help me deal with that is going to be this tend and befriend. Tend and befriend is when you'll talk to people, open up to them, give service. If you know somebody is in stress, that's the befriending and tending to them. Either doing it yourself for someone else, or doing it for someone else doing it for you, is a way that women often deal with their stress. Staying busy and keeping their mind occupied on other things, not avoiding, but coming up with other things to help themselves think about it, get their thoughts processed down before they react to it. That also gives us social support, which is something that has been proven with people that are a lot happier in life. They have social support that supported them in stressful times, or just in general everyday life. They have that support system, and it's proven that happier people have that. Along with social support, there are some other ways to be better at dealing with stress that have been proven through studies that I read. Some of them are personality traits. Some of them I think come easier to others. That these can be learned. It may take more time, but optimism, expecting positive things all the time, thinking positively about everything, which takes us back to the good coping skills. Just putting it out there that you can do things, or you can deal with it, rather than thinking negatively, which is a little bit easier sometimes. Hardiness is positive about stressful situations. Once you feel under stress, you're actively thinking about the issues and understanding and learning from them, so you know how to cope and deal with them, not just for next time, but for that time. You're learning, taking it as a learning opportunity, and really actively thinking it through. So if it does happen, or how to help others deal with it next time. Self-efficiency is the last one. It's believing in ourselves positively. Things can still happen to us, but we already have that confidence and that belief in ourselves that we can deal with it and we can get through it. It's believing in a positive result, that things will get better, things will turn up, and that our efforts are good, that we're disciplined, that we know that our efforts are worth putting the time in and working through it, which is also a very good coping mechanism of stress. And it's been said that people with all three of these things, optimism, hardiness, and self-efficiency, which are hard things, but they can be learned, tend to live happier and longer lives because they know how to deal with stress, so they don't get any of these negative side effects to not dealing with stress or having a lot of stress in their lives. So in conclusion to all of this, I hope you learned about stress and stress management. So in conclusion, I hope you learned a little bit on how to deal with stress and the importance of dealing with it, and how it can affect our body in so many different ways, not just our heart, but our nervous system and the hormones in our brain that help us choose if we're going to fight or flight. Those hormones such as cortisol or testosterone or estrogen can affect lots of things like hair loss, weight gain or weight loss. It affects our sex life as well as just being able to balance our everyday stresses. It makes it harder to deal with those kind of things. It also affects our immune system immensely because those hormones are off balance. Our blood pressure can go up, our breathing tends to get faster or more shallow depending on the hormone, the release of the hormone. Our muscles tense up and our body the nervous system overreacts and makes a lot of parts of our body overreact because of the release of those hormones in our body. Again, I'll dive into the 2 times that I've dealt with stress. Positively, I like to work out more, so if I have a lot going on at work and I'm feeling overwhelmed, for instance, if I get assigned a project that I have to make sure the entire staff is trained on and understands it and can competently perform it, that tends to stress me out. If I go to the gym regularly, I think it balances out those hormones so that my brain is better at making decisions and dealing with that stress, and the response is a lot more positive. Whereas when I've gone through breakups or bad relationships, I tend to shut in. I don't want to talk about it, and I sleep a lot. I don't get out of bed, which in response is not positive because I end up dwelling on it more, overanalyzing it, and not necessarily dealing with it in a positive, level-minded way. Both of those responses are due to the pathways in our brain and the hormones that make us choose to either fight, flight, or work through it, talking to friends and family, and tending and befriending to those situations as they arise.